What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. My name is Kyle Yates. Thanks for joining us. As always, you can find our brand new content every week at youtube.com/fantasypros, as well as on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow while you're there. Let's get right to it, because today we're highlighting 11 players that should be on the move in your fantasy football leagues. Let's kick it off with the sell high players. Number 1, Jalen Hurts, quarterback, Philadelphia Eagles. This trade is more centered around Superflex leagues, but it revolves around the possibility that the Philadelphia Eagles could be involved in the Deshaun Watson trade conversation. Let's face it, Hurts has been a terrible NFL quarterback. He's getting the job done each week for fantasy football due to playing in garbage time for the majority of the fourth quarter, but eventually Philadelphia is going to be forced into doing something about the quality of the play. From a fantasy totals perspective, Hurts is crushing it and has plenty of trade value in Superflex formats. If you can move him for someone with more job security that also comes with plenty of upside, it's a move worth considering. Number 2, Myles Gaskin, running back, Miami Dolphins. Gaskin's fantasy football production has been a yo-yo this season. He's finished each good game with a bad performance and followed it right back up with a big outing, which is infuriating for fantasy players. He's coming off of a blow-up performance in Week 7, so this is the chance to ship him off for as high a cost as you can get and save yourself the headache. It's really as simple as that. Number 3 on the sell-high players list, Michael Carter, running back, New York Jets. Carter's coming off of his first big performance in the NFL, and there's every reason to believe that his usage is here to stay. With that being said, he still plays for the New York Jets and an offense that is going to struggle to move the ball against any opponent. If you are able to take Carter and flip him for a running back that has a similar guaranteed workload and plays in a better offense, that's probably the right call. Number 4, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver, Atlanta Falcons. It's just not happening for Ridley this year in Atlanta. Even though he's seeing plenty of targets in this offense, it's not translating to the fantasy production that we were all hoping for. Coming off of a game in which he found the end zone, this might be the perfect opportunity to see if you can sell high on Ridley and get someone who we have a little bit more confidence in from a fantasy perspective. For example, a trade I'd be looking to make if I have Ridley is going after DK Metcalf. Metcalf's disappointing a little bit here without Russell Wilson in the lineup, but we know that that's going to change eventually. We don't know that Ridley's production is going to increase as the season moves along. The last sell-high player, Robert Tonyan, tight end, Green Bay Packers. Tonyan now has had 5 games so far this season where he has scored 2 or fewer fantasy points. There's a possibility that what we saw from Tonyan and the Packers last week is here to stay, but there's the more likely possibility that it was a fluke performance and he's going to go back to barely being involved. If I roster Tonyan still, I'm taking whatever I can get for him. Let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, buy low players. Number 1, DJ Moore, wide receiver, Carolina Panthers. Buy low windows are created when reality doesn't meet expectations. Just a few weeks ago, fantasy managers believed that they had 2021's breakout player of the year and that Moore was going to be a key piece in delivering them fantasy championships. Unfortunately, the Carolina offense has crumbled in recent weeks and Moore's fantasy stock has taken a hit as a result. However, it's important to remember that he still is an incredibly valuable fantasy asset and that he has yet to really hurt your lineup despite the offensive woes. There may be someone in your league who is frustrated that Moore's not delivering the top tier performances anymore, and that creates a window to buy low. Plus, what happens if Carolina trades for Deshaun Watson at the NFL trade deadline? Number 2, Trey Lance, quarterback, San Francisco 49ers. The rain was coming down in sheets on Sunday night, but it doesn't excuse the performance from Jimmy Garoppolo. At this point, we know who Jimmy G is, and it's not someone who is going to help lead the 49ers to a playoff spot. Lance is the future of this team, and there's a strong possibility that we see him come out as the starter for this offense once he's fully healthy again. We've seen already what Lance can be for fantasy football in his performance against the Cardinals, where he had 16 rush attempts, and he was merely an inch away from being a top 12 quarterback in his first ever NFL start. The 49ers don't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon, and that means that they should get Lance the reps he needs. I believe the time is coming where he's going to be starting, and that means that this is one of the last buy low windows for the fantasy football cheat code quarterback. Number 3 on the buy low players list, Antonio Gibson, running back, Washington football team. Has Gibson lived up to the lofty expectations we placed on him coming into the season? No, he has not. However, he's also been playing the majority of this season with a stress fracture in his shin. While Gibson should probably just be allowed to rest up and get his body right, he's fighting through it and he's still providing decent fantasy numbers in the meantime. Washington has a matchup against Denver this next week, and then their bye is in week 9. This is the moment where Gibson is going to be able to rest up and come out of the bye week healthy and ready to roll, which makes this the perfect time to buy low when fantasy managers are frustrated with the output. If you're a team that looks to be contending for a playoff spot, Gibson's a perfect investment where he can be had for a lot cheaper right now than what his production is going to be down the stretch. Number 4, David Montgomery, running back, Chicago Bears. This is a bit of a risky move due to the fact that we don't know exactly when Montgomery is going to come off of injured reserve. However, he should be returning within the next couple of weeks, and we know that he's going to be given a heavy workload when he does return. Fantasy managers that have Montgomery sitting on their bench right now are likely in need of an immediate replacement, so if you have an expendable option at the running back position, it's worth engaging in trade talks to see if you can acquire Montgomery cheap right now to bolster a deep playoff run. Number 5, T. Higgins, wide receiver, Cincinnati Bengals. Higgins has been a bit of a disappointment since coming back from his injury, and there are plenty of fantasy managers in leagues that just look at the fantasy points column in lineups versus studying what the surrounding context was. Higgins finished with just a 7 for 62 and 0 stat line in week 7, but it's incredibly important to note that he had a shocking 15 targets. This total was enough to lead the entire team last week, and it's notable that that was double what Tyler Boyd saw in this game. Plenty of fantasy managers chase touchdown production or unsustainable yards per reception efficiency, but volume is what matters the most in fantasy football. If you can find someone in your league who's only focusing on the production the past few weeks versus the opportunity, it's a perfect time to strike. The last buy low player here, Jeudy, wide receiver, Denver Broncos. This is simply just a notice to go out and acquire Jeudy for cheap before he comes back into the lineup. He should step right back into being the number 1 target in this Broncos offense and should be a valuable low-end wide receiver too moving forward. If you can find someone who isn't viewing him in that light, it's worth acquiring him for cheap before he bursts back onto the scene as early as this week. That will do it for our discussion with 11 players that should be on the move in your fantasy football leagues. Are you going to be going out and selling any of these players or buying low? Let us know in the comments section, and while you're there, hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can stay up to date on all of our future content.